There's a public leaderboard called Viberank where developers upload what their coding tools in say they've spent, and the developer at the top has logged over $200,000. Numbers like that make a $200 a month subscription look like the deal of the century. Except the tool on somebody's own laptop produced every figure on that board and it produced them wrong. Anthropic's own cost documentation walks through a single session of just under a million tokens. Tokens are the chunks of text these models build by, so a million of them ought to cost real money. Run that session at Anthropic's published rates for Opus 5, which is the engine the paid plans default to, and it comes to 92 cents. Multiply the same session by the headline price everyone quotes, and you land on $4.98, more than 5 times too much. So before anyone tells you whether the $200 plan is worth paying for, somebody has to fix the number. So where did the money in that session actually go? 4 lines get added to the bill, and they behave nothing alike. There's fresh input, which is the new text you send up. There's output, which is what the model writes back. And there are 2 kinds of cache, which is text, the model has already seen, and reads again. Measure those 4 by volume, and the cache reads swallow 94% of the tokens. Measure the same 4 by cost, and they drop to 51%, because the cache read only costs a tenth of fresh text. Output runs the other way, since it's half of 1% of the tokens, and yet it carries 14% of the cost. So count tokens, and you're measuring the cheapest thing on the bill. What decides whether your plan is worth it is how many dollars it gives back each day. The formula is short. Take what the plan costs and divide it by the days you actually work in a month. What comes out is how much the plan has to give back every working day before it's covered itself. Call it 21 working days. That puts the $20 plan at about 95 cents a day, the $100 plan at $4.76, and the $200 plan at $9.52. $9.52 every working day before the subscription has broken even. Prices move, so run the division again when they do. The method outlives the figures, which leaves a question about people rather than pricing. Does a normal day of work give that much back? Anthropic answers that question, though not in anything aimed at you. They tell enterprise administrators to budget $40 a month for a median Claude Code user, $215 for a typical one, and $500 for somebody in the top 10%. They call these rough planning estimates and never say how many people they describe, so treat them as guidance rather than measurement. Set them against the plans though, and the picture gets awkward. If you're the median user, the $200 plan charges you 5 times what you use. If you're the typical one at $215, you'll land almost exactly on the price of the plan. For most people, the answer is already visible, and the screenshots have been pointing the other way. That's the middle. The 2 ends sit much further apart than the middle suggests. One developer measured every Claude session they ran across roughly 6 months and found $19.32 of usage, which is half a year of work on a plan that bills every month. Another on the $100 plan measured about $600 inside a single month, so they took back 6 times what they paid, and one instrumented week on the $200 plan reached at least $1,100. The developer who measured it calls that a floor and ran it before the limits went up, so the real ceiling sits higher. Sustain that for a month and the plan gives back something like 22 times its price. Between the smallest and largest figures, the same tool has published sits about 4 orders of magnitude, and everyone inside that range calls themselves a user of the same product. So whether the plan is a bargain, a wash, or a waste depends on which of those people you turn out to be. What does it take to reach the top of that range? Not by typing faster, because the limit responds to how many things you run at once. Claude Code can fan out, so one instruction becomes many agents working in parallel, each holding its own context, and that's where the large numbers come from. Anthropic once published the largest plan's allowance as 240 to 480 hours of model time a week, which is worth pausing on, because a week only contains 168 hours. It never measured time spent at a keyboard. Inside a single 60-hour week, one developer exhausted a team seat by day 6, a 20-time seat by day 4, and a rival product's top plan by day 3. When people reach that ceiling, they don't upgrade because there's nothing above it to buy, so they run 2 accounts side by side instead. An Anthropic engineer has said publicly that doing so doesn't break the terms. That's the top of this market, and every other company prices the same thing differently. Nobody marks up the model itself. GitHub Copilot's published rate card matches Anthropic's own prices line for line, and Anthropic sells its own overage at standard API rates. What differs between these companies is how much they include before the meter starts. Copilot's base credits come to exactly the subscription price, so $10 of credit on the $10 plan and 100 on the 100. On top of that sits a bonus allowance, which GitHub says out loud may change over time. The subsidy also grows as the plans get more expensive because the cheapest Copilot tier hands back around 1.5 times its price, while the dearest hands back 2. That's a strange shape since the heaviest users are supposedly the costly ones, and they're the ones being given the most. It tells you what these subscriptions are really selling. They're selling a ceiling on what can go wrong. The largest amounts anyone in this research reported paying didn't come from power users at all. One developer's scheduled job picked up an API key and ran for 2 days, which cost $1,800. Another paid $447 across 2 days, while the tool itself reported they were on a subscription. Both come from public bug reports with no invoice attached, which is worth saying plainly because no invoice appears anywhere in this research at all. Every figure here is somebody's own calculation, including Anthropic's, and their documentation says Claude Code works the number out locally at public prices, and it may differ from your actual bill. For subscribers, they go further and say it isn't relevant to billing, so what you're buying is a number that can't be exceeded, and the tokens are close to beside the point. So here's the rule worth keeping. Take what your plan costs, divide it by the days you actually work, and ask whether a normal day gives that much back. That's 95 cents a day on the cheap plan and $9.52 on the expensive one. Anthropic's own median user spends $40 a month, which the cheapest plan covers twice over. The $200 plan earns its price for one kind of person, and that's somebody running work in parallel, most days, on purpose. Think back to that session from the opening, the one worth 92 cents. At 92 cents a session, the expensive plan needs about 10 of them every working day before it breaks even. 10. So is it worth it? For most people, no. And you don't have to take that on trust. The whole check is one division and 1 week of paying attention.